20 years is a long time when you're counting wounds, and no time at all when you're counting ghosts. The human Kor War ended without parades, without signatures on paper. The guns cooled, the borders hardened, and a hush settled on the star maps like frost. The rest of the galaxy learned a habit. Do not drift too close to human space. Humans learned a habit of their own. Do not chase what runs. No treaties, no embassies, just silence. A buffer between species and the memories they refused to touch. Apton Sarm had been born during the last year of the war. He grew up with its shadows but not its shape, raised on rationed stories and careful omissions, cautionary tales without names, triumphs without cost. He wore his uniform the way children wear their parents' coats, too carefully, afraid to crease the myth. His patrol ship, the KSV Vorin, cruised the core human demarcation line, a thin thread of coordinates stitched into a dark sky. The border beacons blinked their steady message into vacuum. Here and no further. Sarm walked the bridge with practiced calm. Report. Clear, Captain, said Tactical. Passive scans nominal. They always were. This was the part of the map where nothing moved. Not empires, not traitors, not rumors. The war had left an empty circle, and everyone honored it like holy ground, or a minefield. He was thinking about making tea. Captain, Sensor cried. Unusual reading. Human side. The word human changed the air. Backs straightened. Conversations died mid-flight. Sarm stepped to the display. A thin ripple, more idea than signal, skimmed the edge of their scopes. A skip in reality. He felt it more than saw it. A small wrongness, like a remembered name he couldn't place. He knew the rule carved by 2 decades of habit. Do not enter human space. He also knew the ruin whispered by curiosity. Range? He asked. 1.2 light minutes human side. It's not natural, and not a weapon signature I recognize. Sarm watched the ripple fold and unfold, like a breathing the cosmos forgot to conceal. He told himself he was a captain made for this, to weigh caution against duty, duty against fear, fear against ambition. Bring us to 1 light minute, he said. Passive only, no broadcast, Captain, his XO warned. If they see us, they will, Sarm said. And if it's a hazard, we should know. He didn't add, I want to know. The Vorin slid closer. The ripple sharpened. Reality blinked. And a ship appeared. Human, sleek, scarred, silent. It did not decloak. It became visible as if the universe only then remembered to render it. A channel opened by itself. No hail, no handshake, just a voice, medium register, iron under ash. This is Commander Christopher Oscarson, Human Navy, it said. Most call me Scar. You've crossed into human space, Sarm stood. Behind measured breath, something like pride woke and decided to live dangerously. I detected an anomaly, Sarm said. I meant no excuses, Scar said. Calm, flat. You're here. That's enough. On Sarm's bridge, the crew held very still, as if movement were a legal admission. Sarm lifted his chin. I am Captain Sarm of the Core Sovereign Fleet. I will leave. But tell me, what is that ripple on the boundary? Scar regarded him through the screen like a surgeon deciding if the patient deserved truth. Lines around his eyes carved a map Sarm did not know how to read. A scar, Scar said at last. Wars don't end. They hardened Sarm would remember that sentence later and wonder if the man liked riddles or just hated answers. He was about to request permission to back away when the air on his bridge tightened, as if a hand had closed around it and squeezed. Energy on the deck coughed blue, then white, and an object blinked into being on the grating between Sarm's boots. Every core on the bridge drew weapons. Sarm didn't move. He recognized it. A dagger, warlord length, core steel, the hilt inlaid with hammered obsidian and 3 chips of starglass. The crest on its guard belonged to one house only, a sigil bent like a crescent striking a star. Zath. Warlord Zath's dagger, the blade from a dozen murals, from 1,000 whispered stories, the blade he carried at the Battle of Black Turn, the blade he lost. Sarm crouched. His hand hovered, then closed around it. Cold, then heat, then memory. Borrowed, not his. He rose. Explain, he said, not bothering to hide the rasp in his voice. Kar's eyes didn't change. We do not forget. The line clicked and died. The human ship did not jump. It faded, like breath on glass. One frame, then absence. Sarm's comm chimed a new tone. Priority recall. The seal that appeared on his console made his throat tighten. The warlord's summons? Immediate. No reasons given. None required. He looked down at the dagger. The obsidian drank the light and returned it as a warning. Course for high orbit, he said softly. Best speed. No one spoke on the way home. Silence followed Sarm like a second uniform. Warlord Zath's hall refused to pretend it wasn't built to overawe. The ceiling swallowed light. Standard gravity felt subtly heavier here. A calibration error no engineer dared correct. Banners hung with the weight of textiles that had known smoke. A single dais rose like a stone lifted straight out of a battlefield and told to behave. Zath sat there, as if the stone had chosen him. He was old in the way metals are old. Scars didn't cross his skin. They lived there. Permanent tenants. One ran from above his left brow to the hinge of his jaw, a pale river with a history. His eyes were black with a ring of storm gray, and when they shifted to Sarm, they did so without hurry. Come, he said. Sarm walked the long way, as required by the geometry of power. He stopped 4 paces from the dais and knelt, arms extended, the dagger across his palms. It was returned, he said, by a human commander. Scar. The warlord's stillness deepened. Then, slow as planets, his hands came forward and lifted the dagger. He held it like a prayer answered by mistake. The blade you know, Zath said. The hand that took it. Do you? Sarm swallowed. Scar. Zath nodded once. Christopher Oscarson. The man who almost killed me. The man I almost killed, he stood. The hall went quieter. Memory walked into the room with him. You are too young, Zath said, to know anything but the war's shadow on your walls. You think you were born after the story ended. You were born in the long breath between sentences. He descended the dais steps, step by step. Every tread and argument, the floor conceded. You want to know what he gave back, Zath said. I will tell you what he took. Zath paced before Sarm, the dagger in his hand marking time. He spoke without trumpet, without courtly amplification. He didn't have to raise his voice. The words had weight. We met at Black Turn, he said, a corridor of debris through a dying star's magnetic field. Human strikes had cut our supply chain. We were hungry and proud, bad together. Sarm had seen hollows, angled ships carving bright lines through a field of iron filings dancing on magnetism. Numbers, vectors, not this. Human doctrine then, Zath said, was to be inconvenient to inevitability. They couldn't match our hull mass or thrust in a straight line. They matched something else. Our mistakes, he gestured with the blade. They came in broken formations, by which I mean formations that looked broken until you saw what their fractures made possible. Their captains declared things a sane officer would not. They won uglily. They bled beautifully. They endured. He halted. And their commander, there was Scar. Sarm pictured the man on the view screen, the iron at the edges, the voice like banked coals. Hard to imagine young. Hard to imagine ever having been anything but the thing he was now. Worn, honed. We boarded, Zath said simply. Human ship HNS Fenrir, rooms on fire, corridor angles that made sense only when you were already dead. My guard fell, his guard fell. Then it was him and me. The ship maybe would have held us both because we were heavier than the gravity. He raised the dagger, looked at the spine of it, as if reading a verse. I had him. Blade at his throat. He had me. Gun at my heart. We were, as the humans say, stalemated. What happened? Sarm asked, forgetting to swallow rank titles. A child coughed, Zath said. Sarm blinked. A child? Zath's mouth moved in something that wanted to be a smile and decided against it. Humans put children on ships. Not on purpose, because they put people on ships and people make children, even in war. That is a thing you must understand about them. Their empire is not neat, it is alive. He lowered the blade. There was a service corridor beyond us. Smoke. In it, a technician trying to drag a container toward an airlock. Inside it, a child. Mask too big, straps too loose. The human glanced at us with a look I have never seen again. More tired than the hull. Zath's eyes drifted, not unfocused, but aimed at something Sarm couldn't see. I stepped. He stepped. We forgot to kill each other for exactly enough heartbeats to let a stranger pass. He looked down at the dagger. Then he took it. Your dagger? Sarm asked. My dagger, Zath said. He disarmed me. Nicely. I disarmed him. Badly. He bled from the mouth and laughed once the way men laugh, when they would rather die than do the next thing. And then he did the next thing. What was it? He ordered his own ship to seal the corridor. Zath's voice was flat with respect. Trapped me on the human side. Trapped him on mine. I don't know if he meant to trade lives for time, or if he trusted something I didn't. I only know the deck lurched, and a new line drew itself across the map, and when the air came back, he was gone. The dagger was gone. The ship lived. So did I. He held the blade out, and the light on the obsidian crest moved like memory does when you touch it too hard. He kept this. I kept the scar. Sarm felt his own pulse in his tongue. Why return it now? Zath looked up, and for the first time Sarm saw not a warlord, but a man who had survived the kind of day that folds you into a different shape. Because you asked a question, Captain, Zath said, on a border drawn in ash. You asked what is that ripple, and the man who once trapped me on the wrong side of a door teleported a memory to your feet and said, we do not forget. He took one step closer to Sarm. They want us to remember who they were, and who we were, and that the line between the two is thinner than pride pretends. V, the recall within. Why recall me then? Sarm asked. If the humans wanted a message delivered, why not? Let it be delivered? Zath gave him the patient look of one who has taught the same lesson to too many sons. Because you might have tried to deliver it twice, the warlord said, and the second time, you might not have returned. Sarm opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He had come home with questions. Now he had one more. I crossed their line because something felt wrong, he said. I wanted to understand, not provoke. Zath nodded. Curiosity is a virtue in peacetime. In the quiet after war, it is a fuse. Do we live like this forever? Sarm asked. A risk, that word we, used in the warlord's hall. Breathing carefully? Pretending our knives don't exist? Zath turned the dagger and slid it into the sheath on his belt. The motion was slow, ceremonial. He had worn that absence for 20 years. Now the weight returned. It changed the way he stood. We live with memory, Zath said. Not as a garment we can hang up, but as skin. Those who forget their scars think they are healed. Those who remember them learn to move differently. He lifted his head. But if you think I recalled you only to tell you a story, you are more romantic than I hoped. 6. Orders. A chamber door opened behind Sarm. A hollow map rose from the floor, an unadorned ribbon of space, the border, and a shaded zone inside human territory that pulsed in a quiet, unhealthy way. The ripple. Sarm's breath tried to hurry. He made it slow. What is it? He asked. Old debris fields, Zath said. We assumed the scars were simple gravity quirks. Your scan says otherwise. Humans are doing something there. Or something is being done to them. It doesn't matter which. It matters that we do not learn more by dying to know it. Sarm waited. You will return to the border, Zath said, and you will not cross it. You will place 2 buoys with passive eyes and long patience. You will not blink loud. You will listen, and if they hail, you will answer every question with one sentence, Zath said. We remember. Sarm swallowed. And if they ask what that means? Zath looked at the door as if a younger version of himself stood there, waiting to be told something he would not like. It means, he said, we do not mistake a returned dagger for an invitation. It means we admire their mercy and fear their math. It means the last time I met Scar in a doorway, We both chose a child over victory, and the war lived a day longer because of it. It means if we are lucky, we will never again have to be that brave. He turned. Do your duty, Captain. And do not be clever. The Vorn returned to the line under the weight of a story Sarm hadn't known he needed and wasn't sure he wanted. The crew behaved with the careful energy of people who know they've walked past a grave that used to be their size. Sarm stood at the forward pane and watched emptiness behave itself. Mark positions for boys, he said. Passive, narrowband, wake masking. Aye, Tactical said. The hull hummed. He found himself touching the spot on the deck where the dagger had appeared, as if stone remembered pressure. He imagined Scar on a human bridge, making the choice to send it, not across meters, but across 20 years of pride. We do not forget. Captain, Sensor said softly, we have a motion in the ripple. The bridge stilled. The ripple breathed. Sarm felt the urge to speak to it, the way you soothe a wild animal. Low, easy, palms open. A spark flared, then went out. For a heartbeat, Sarm saw the outline of something on the far side. Structures like scaffolds woven with light and ships that weren't ships. Not clearly, just a suggestion, a sketch a child had made of the way adults hold grief. Is it a weapon? Exo whispered. No, Sarm said before he had evidence. It's a memory. A tone pinged, an incoming message not across space, but across habit. Secure channel, low power, human origin. One sentence in clean core script. We remember too. Sarm closed his eyes. Record and forward, he said. Forward to whom? Exo asked. Sarm opened his eyes. Everyone who needs to know why they should not be brave. The warlord's answer arrived as a single word. Acknowledged. No flourish. Zath did not do flourish. Sarm tried to decide if the pit in his stomach was fear or relief, or, worse, admiration. He dreamed badly. In his dream, he was back on his bridge as the dagger appeared. Only this time, it unfolded into a door. On the other side stood a man not young, not old, who looked at Sarm the way men look at maps when they are trying to find the face of home. You asked what the ripple is, the man said. Scar's voice. It's where the universe keeps the things we can't afford to forget. Sarm woke with a start, the word afford echoing, because it was how Warlord Zath explained mercy when he was angry, as a debt one must budget for. He walked the quiet corridor to the observation blister and found the line like a seam holding two different fabrics together. He put his palm against the pane and pretended he could feel another palm on the other side. He whispered, I am efficient. A ridiculous thing to say to an empty sea. 2 shifts later, the human ship reappeared, not with engines, but like a thought returning. No formal hail, a text frame opened with coordinates and 2 words, hold position. Sarm's officers looked at him like instruments waiting for a conductor brave enough to choose a key. We hold, Sarm said. Recorders hot. Beyond the line, in the ripple, light folded into a shape Sarm recognized only because his childhood had been fed on pictures of it. A battlefield. Not real, no kinetic energy. A projection, a memorial. The scene built itself. Core ships and human ships in the half-ruined geometry of Black Turn. Sarm felt his pulse climb and reminded it about professionalism. A voice layered over the image. Scars, older, but more alive than before. As if speaking about the past made something in him sit up straighter. You weren't there, Scar said. You live in the world it built. That's not your fault. That's the risk we took, so you wouldn't have to. The hologram on the far side rewound and centered on a corridor. 2 figures faced each other. One Sarm knew from murals, one from a screen. The door he'd never seen slid shut between them, and the image froze on 2 faces that both looked like men trying to choose the least expensive sin. We fought, Scar said. We stopped. We chose. He lived. I lived. Everything else followed. The projection dimmed to starlight. One last picture remained. Zath's dagger, resting on a human palm, then dissolving to reappear on Sarm's deck, over and over, a loop that said message delivered in a grammar older than politics. The frame winked off. Sarm exhaled something he hadn't realized he'd held. The bridge exhaled with him. Captain, Exo said quietly. What do we send back? Sarm looked at the line. He thought of a child coughing on a human ship. He thought of a warlord removing a blade from its scabbard after 2 decades and feeling his posture change. He said, we send the same 2 words. The message went, we remember. It felt insufficient. It felt right. Back in the hall, Zath listened to Sarm's report without interruption. When the playback reached the corridor scene, his eyes thinned. He showed you this, Zath said. He showed us, Sarm corrected, surprising himself. Zath nodded as if cataloging the correction for future use. He pulled the dagger, weighed it, then slid it into place again. Once, Zath said, I believed the purpose of a blade was to end questions. I have learned that sometimes a blade is meant to hang at your side and make you choose different doors. He caught Sarm's gaze. You wanted adventure, Sarm started. You did, Zath said, not unkindly. It's not a crime. Your blood is young. Even mine remembers the taste of wanting to carve your name into the map. Sarm opened his mouth, then closed it because honest men do not waste the warlord's patience with performances. Yes, he said. I wanted to be the first to know. Zath's mouth bent toward a smile that might be called mercy if you had the right lens. You were the first to learn something else, the warlord said. That knowing is cheaper than understanding. The humans paid full price. So did we. He gestured toward the holomap. You will hold the line. You will grow old enough to tell this story without wishing it were louder. That is how empires survive long enough to deserve their songs. Sarm bowed his head. The posture felt less like submission than alignment. Weeks passed. The buoys watched. The ripple breathed. No new weapons appeared. Only the sense of an old wound being taught to scar without infection. Merchant whispers adjusted their routes by a degree and congratulated themselves on prudence. On a quiet watch, a bare whisper brushed the Voron's comm. An audio file. Human. No encryption beyond politeness. Sarm played it on the bridge. The crew all leaned forward, not because they had to, but because the voice inside human sound made the night listen. It was Scar again. You told your warlord, he said. Not a question. He told you stories. Good. That's how this doesn't happen again. A rustle. Maybe a hand on a chair. Maybe memory-shifting weight. In the doorway, Scar said. He could have killed me. I could have killed him. We chose a child. It wasn't wisdom. It was gravity. The kind of gravity that doesn't come from mass, but from meaning. I don't know if we can teach that, but we can refuse to forget it. A pause. Take care of your young captains. They're the ones most likely to mistake a border for a dare. The file ended. The bridge was very quiet. Sarm stared at the pane. His reflection looked older by a thin edge he couldn't name. He thought about daring and doors and the knives you keep sheathed on purpose. He said, record. Ready, comm said. Message to human contact. Acknowledged. We will hold. We will remember. He hesitated, then added, not as captain to commander, not as Kor to human, but as one officer to another who had chosen a child in a smoke-filled corridor. Thank you. The send light blinked and went out. 12. The weight of metal. On his way to quarters, Sarm found his boots taking him down a wrong corridor, the one that ended in a little ceremonial alcove no one used because it felt like superstition. A simple stand there displayed the ship's sword, dull, unblooded, a symbol given to captains the way crowns are given to statues. Sarm stood before it and thought about symbols that weren't harmless. He thought about a knife that had lived on 2 hips. Warlord and enemy. He thought about a day when both men found the world heavier than victory. He drew the ship's sword half an inch and pushed it back in. A promise that the ship would carry weight without cutting unless it had to. He whispered to nobody, we will not be brave. Then he corrected himself, because he had Zath's voice in his ear and Scar's in his other. We will be brave at the right door. Far away in a different geometry, a human ship drifted at the edge of the ripple. On its spine, a man with iron-gray hair stood helmetless inside a skim of air. He did not light a lantern. This wasn't that corridor, but he looked like he might have if one existed. A junior officer joined him. Sir? Why the core dagger now? Why that captain? Scar squinted at the seam of space. Because he asked. That's it? That's it, Scar said. Wars start for grand reasons. Peace starts because one person asks the right question and the other person doesn't lie. The junior officer thought about that, then said, Do you miss it? The war? Scar asked. The certainty, the junior said. Scar smiled without his mouth. Every day. That's how you know you're doing peace right. They stood a while longer, listening to a quiet that had earned its own name. In the hall, Zath removed the dagger, weighed it, and handed it to a servant with a nod that meant, find the old place. The old place was a wall recess flanked by two low lamps, a spot chosen long ago by a warlord who understood that weapons are best kept where you can see them and remember what they cost. Sarm stood, hands at his sides. He took it from me in a fight, Zath said. He returned it inside a story. Both acts required more strength than most men teach their sons. Sarm risked one more question. Will you ever meet him again? Zath's eyes went distant. I hope not, he said. Then after a moment, softer, I hope so. They stood together in a moment that reminded Sarm of the pause between the last heartbeats of a storm and the first sounds of a city realizing the roof's held. Go, Zath said. Hold the line. Teach your crew how to be bored with honor. Sarm bowed. On his way out, he looked back once at the dagger where it rested, and it looked back, the way objects do when they have learned the shape of your house. 20 years after the war, the galaxy still avoided human space. Humans still stayed home mostly. The line remained, but lines can be more than fences. They can be scars that remind you how to move. They can be doors you choose, not because you are afraid to open them, but because the rooms on the other side are ready now, and you are too. Captain Sarm returned to the Vorin and kept watch. He read reports. He learned patience. The ripple breathed. Occasionally a message crossed. 2 words, sometimes 3. We remember, acknowledged. He grew older in the right ways. On certain nights, he walked to the observation blister and put his palm against the glass and pretended he could feel another palm on the other side. Maybe he was right. The silence between species continued. It was not an absence. It was a promise. And a promise is a relic that keeps its edge.